Okay, so we've got IELTS Task 1 essay, and we're analysing figures based on the flow of time. As we can see, we've got a bar chart here that we're going to look at, and let's look at the topic. The table below shows the figures for imprisonment in 5 countries between 1930 and 1980. Write a report for a university lecturer describing the information shown below. You should write at least 150 words. Okay, so the first thing I always tell my students to do is to check the dates. Okay, so it's between 1930 to 1980. So you know everything that you say needs to be in the past tense. Okay, so don't get confused about your tenses. That's the first mistake students make on these kind of questions. Okay, and then we're going to take a quick scan over the data because we're looking for points of comparison. Usually in these style of questions, you want your sort of overview and paraphrase together. So you start by paraphrasing the purpose of the graph, then you overview the main trends. So you sort of pick out 2 trends that you're going to talk about, and then you give trend 1 detail and then trend 2 detail, okay, and discuss it a little bit more depth. Okay, so it's usually a 3-paragraph structure for task 1 essay. So let's take a look. So we've got each sort of 10 years, we've got a different figure, and we're just looking for general trends that we can pick out. This is a little bit tricky because there aren't 2 very clear trends. They tend to fluctuate a lot. The first thing I'm seeing is that Great Britain, we've got this steady increase over time. So you can see that there's sort of gradually going up. So that could be a trend to talk about. America is number one most years. And so it's kind of like America is overall on average got the highest amount, followed by Canada. So I would say America and Canada are the 2 highest ones over this period, while Britain has like a gradual increase. And then I think Australia and New Zealand are just kind of fluctuating a lot. So I kind of would probably look at, first one I would look at would be Great Britain, sort of the gradual increase for Great Britain. And then the second one I would look at, I'd probably discuss the US and Canada together. And then I would probably compare Britain's steady increase with Australia and New Zealand fluctuating, because you want to try to gradually mention as much as you can in the detail sections, but the overview would focus on those 2 trends. So let's look at what this candidate has done. So the given bar graph illustrates the number of people who were put in prison in 5 different countries, namely the UK, Australia, New Zealand, the US, and Canada from 1930 to 1980. So this rather than in a 50-year, over a 50-year period. If you don't need to say both. If you're going to say from 1930 to 1980, then you don't need to say over a 50-year period. So I would probably just get rid of the dates and just say over a 50-year period. Put in prison is okay. They're trying to paraphrase imprisonment. Another good word to use is incarcerated. Incarcerated means to be, is a fancy way of saying imprisoned. So that would be like a slightly fancier way to put it, but I do appreciate they've tried to paraphrase. So look at the overview. Overall, it is clear that 4 countries except the UK showed some fluctuation every period. I would just say throughout this period. While only 1 country, the United Kingdom, displayed an upward trend. Okay, but you've mentioned the UK twice. It's clear that 4 countries except the UK. So I would get rid of this part. Overall, it's clear that 4 countries showed some fluctuation every period, while only 1 country, the United Kingdom, displayed an upward trend. It's also interesting to note that 2 countries the 2 countries in North America provided the highest figures every year. Okay, so they've kind of gone for the same 2 trends we picked out. So overall, it's a nice overview. The structure of the sentences are a little bit tricky. They've tried to write a longer, more complex sentence, which I appreciate, but the grammar is a little bit off. Let's look at the detail. Look at the graph in more detail. So look at the graph. So that's very instructional sentence. When we start with a verb like that, it's like an instruction. So it's kind of aggressive. So we would just say to look at the graph in more detail rather than look at the graph. To look at the graph in more detail, in 1930, the number of people who were imprisoned. So you could say, or you could say the number of prisoners, if you want to paraphrase more, was the highest, followed by Australia and the United Kingdom. Was the highest where? Was the highest in country, followed by Australia and the United States. So I think they mean Canada here. It was in Canada. Followed by Australia and the United States at about 120,000, 100,000 respectively. Those people, it should be those figures or those numbers remain steadily the highest figure for two countries in North America, However, the case of Canada was shown a period of instability, the overall trend went down slightly. Okay, so the whole feeling of this paragraph is slightly confusing. I can feel what the candidate's trying to say. They've picked out the detail. They know what they're trying to say. It's just, I think it's the structure of the sentences is confusing for me. The sentences, this sentence and this sentence, the structure of the sentence, the order in which you're giving me the information is confusing. However, in the case of Canada, it can be seen that there was a period of instability and the overall trend went down gradually. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, so I think it's just this candidate, it feels like they maybe they ran out of time a little bit and were just rushing through this last part because this is so short here. And this is not as good as the first paragraph, which was a bit stronger. So I'm just wondering if this candidate ran out of time and started to rush. On the other hand, in the UK, it started with the lowest population, with the lowest imprisoned population, would be a different way to say it, in 1930. While it started with the lowest imprisoned population in 1930, the figure trebled approximately 25 to 13. So I like this use of the word trebled. I think that's nice. But it's too short. So I think this candidate, you're going to get marked down because you've not talked enough detail about the trends and the numbers and the years. Your overview was nice. You picked out the two main trends, but you've just not explained them in enough detail. So for me, task achievement is probably going to go down to a 5.5 because you do pick out trends, you do have an overview, but you've not detailed the trends or explained them enough. Cohesion and coherence, that you do have paragraphs, you have done an overview, but just, not quite enough detail. So again, probably a 5.5. Vocabulary was okay. I could see you were trying to paraphrase, you were trying to link together. Grammar, I think you're going to have to go down a little bit lower for grammar just because there were places where, like you saw, I was struggling to understand what you meant and I had to reread the sentences more than once. If the examiner has to read it more than once to understand what you mean to say, that's just going to knock your grammar down. Your grammar doesn't have to be perfect, but I have to be able to understand what you want to say on the first reading. So this is really where the candidate has the most room for improvement. So I think we're sort of coming up probably around a 5.0 overall. I have to double check. I mean, maybe I could see an argument for going to a 5.5, but to be honest, I think overall a 5.0 was okay. I think the grammar is what they need to work on the most and taking a little bit more time. It felt very rushed. Okay, when they were writing it. So I'd advise them to take their time and to think carefully about their sentences, do a lot more practice of the task ones under timed conditions so you're not as stressed in the test. And then also in your task achievement, make sure to explain more, okay, and use detail. Okay, that part needed to be expanded on more. And then I can very much see this candidate going up to a 5.5 or a 6 because their understanding of the task was very good. Their overview was nice. They started off very strong. I'm just confused and maybe they got a little bit panicked as the time started running out. So I think easily this candidate really can improve and those would be the areas I would suggest they work on the most.